This is Dr. Chris Clayton, clinical hypnotherapist in Virginia Beach. Thank you for joining us in the second episode of Hypnosis Chat. I have with me Brad Snyder, who's a mechanical engineer.
Good evening, everyone.
And I invited Brad here because I want to talk about a topic that I think is very important and interesting about hypnosis. A lot of people have the misconception that hypnosis is a mystical process and or something that's random or not understandable, and really that could not be further from the truth. The brain is actually a very mechanical machine, and the problems that are created and the solutions that are created are very mechanical as well. For example, if you took a car and brought it back to the Stone Age and showed it to the cavemen, they would, and drove it around, they would think it was mystical or magical simply because they don't understand it. But if you sort of took some of the smarter cavemen and had them look at the car and study it for a while, they would realize that it's mechanical. And that's exactly how the brain is, and that's exactly how hypnosis is. That means that it's not random, it's not incomprehensible. It is, the brain follows very specific rules, and hypnosis takes advantage of those rules to correct issues or help you meet goals. So, okay. So Brad, I understand you have some questions for me.
Yes, absolutely. So on that, as a mechanical engineer, everything that I do follows mathematical formulas, rules, physics, a lot of things established in the natural world that you can't avoid. You have to follow these rules if you want to make something work. And I was wondering, how does the brain relate in such a way to a mechanical process? What are the rules? What are the physics of changing a brain to change behavior?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. And the brain is very much a machine, and it's very much like a computer, which of course is a type of machine. It has your brain has a hard drive where it stores memories. We have a CPU, a brain, where we process information. It has a motherboard, a nervous system. Every aspect of the brain has its correlation with a computer and, more broadly, machines in general. For example, let's just say someone who has obsessive compulsive disorder. Let's say the brain only does three things. It thinks, feels, and acts, and it does it in that order. We don't do anything until we feel a certain way about it first, and we don't feel something until we think about it. We don't randomly feel motivated or happy or sad. We have to think certain things, which creates feelings, which creates our behaviors. So let's say, if someone has the thought of, oh, well, they notice that their hands are slightly less than 100% clean, and they perceive that as being dirty, and they feel like they have to go wash their hands. Thought, feeling, behavior. And then if they have that pattern, then every time their hands feel less than 100% clean, they're going to feel like they need to go wash them again. So that's an example of a mechanical process that is a somewhat common process. And all problems that we have with our mental state involves a formula like that, where we perceive something in the wrong way, it creates certain feelings, and then it creates certain behaviors that we don't want. One of the interesting things is if someone has a goal, it's always related to a feeling or a behavior. The problem is, if you want to change either feelings or behaviors, you have to change the thinking, the supporting thinking first. That's why most people are not able to successfully change things in their life, because they try to change the feeling or the behavior directly, or they just don't try at all. In order to change a feeling or behavior, you have to go back, find out what your thought process is that is creating the feeling, which is in turn creating the behavior, and change it so it naturally and organically leads to the feelings and behaviors that you want. So that is the only way to solve a problem or meet a goal effectively. And we have an email from Melinda. I have a phobia of snakes. How would hypnosis help phobias? Okay, so great question. A lot of people are afraid of snakes. Let's take a slightly different example and say some people are afraid of dogs. Now, I'm not afraid of dogs. Are you afraid of dogs, Brad?
No, absolutely not.
Okay,
I own several. I love dogs.
Yep. So with Brad or I, and most people think about dogs, we think about petting the dog, training the dog, feeding the dog, etc., normal dog things. But when someone who has a phobia of dogs thinks about dogs, they will tend to think about that time when they were 9 years old and they were bit by a dog, or how any dog could become aggressive at any time. And that creates a sense of anxiety. And it creates a sense of anxiety in everyone. If I thought about dogs that way, if every time I thought about dogs, I thought about how the dog could bite me, then that would create anxiety. I would be afraid of that also. So there's nothing wrong with that person's brain. They're just doing something in that thinking, feeling, behaving process that is creating this anxiety. So essentially what hypnosis does is it kind of identifies what thought is leading to that feeling, kind of trains your brain to think about dogs in this case in a more normalized way. It's the exact same thing with snakes. So, and snakes are a much more common phobia, but take someone who works at the zoo. They work in the reptile department. When they think about snakes, they think about feeding the snake, taking care of the snake, changing the lights in the snake's cages. And that's just their normal way. They think about snakes in the same way that we think about dogs. They're just animals that need to be taken care of. And when one thinks about snakes in that way, it creates much less anxiety than in the about to bite you way, for example. So using that exact same formula, hypnosis can train someone to think about snakes in sort of this normalized way where they're animals to be taken care of, and that creates less anxiety. The most important thing is that none of those beliefs, either the anxiety-producing dog image or the normalized dog image, neither one of those are true or false. It's interesting because really they're both true, if anything. It's true that you can pet dogs, train dogs, walk dogs, etc. But it's also true that that person was bit by a dog when they were 9 years old. It's also true that you should be careful around dogs because dogs could become aggressive under certain situations. So both of those are true. So I don't care about whether the belief is true or not. I only care about how useful it is for your life. So let go of the idea either that your belief is true or false, or that it matters if it's true or false. The only thing that matters is this belief useful for my life? Is it helping me or is it hurting me? And if you decide it's hurting you, identify a more normalized way of thinking about it. And then kind of that's where the hypnosis comes in, where it installs it into your brain so you think about it that way automatically. So thank you for that question, Melinda. And so no, it's a mechanical process. It's not something that happens randomly. It's not like art where everyone has their own way of doing it. There's no ways that are right or wrong. Everything can be valuable based on how somebody. It's really more mechanical. There is a specific issue that's going on, and it can be fixed in a specific way. That's how hypnosis is, and that's how the brain is. Okay, so Brad, I understand you have another question for me.
Yes. So as a student of mechanical engineering currently, most of my studies, a lot of my classes, homework and stuff, I do on the computer, almost always on the computer exclusively. Drafting, math, all kinds of stuff. But I also use my computer for almost every other aspect of my life: paying bills, playing video games, watching videos. It replaces my cable. I just spend. I don't watch TV. I spend hours on my computer just watching exactly whatever my search engine comes up with. And the problem I run into is that when I'm doing homework, when I'm in the middle of a project, and it starts to become tedious, I have a really, really easy distraction right there in front of me, because my computer is both my workstation and my PlayStation, literally. So I was wondering, can hypnotherapy, and how would hypnotherapy help me to separate and make work and study just as important as play and video games?
So you want to be able to focus on the work and be able to finish that and not be drawn into doing the play things.
Exactly. The problem I run into is that it takes me a lot longer than it normally would just to do my homework.
Right.
If I had just done it, than it does for me to do a problem, then watch a video, do a problem, then watch another video or something like that.
Right. Yeah. And that's one of the most common things that I work with, motivation and focus. And essentially, there are three ways, there's three states your brain can be in at any time. It can be comfortable and motivated. It can be overactive, which would be stressed, afraid, angry, or it can be underactive, bored, lonely, depressed, etc. So those are the only three states your brain can be in. All emotions and other mental states are in one of those three categories. So likewise, there are only three ways you can think about any activity, and they correlate with those three ways. So here, let's do a little experiment. And you can do it, Brad. If you're watching, you can do it at home. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have you think of a type of activity, and I'm going to tell you how you're thinking about it. And I can do that because, again, the brain is a machine, and everyone's brain works the same way as far as this is concerned. So first type of thing, I want you to think of something that you are already motivated to do and enjoy doing. Got something like that?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So with something that you enjoy doing already, so imagine it, get it in your head now, don't change it. Okay, so you've got this image of this thing you're already motivated to do. And in this image, you are in the middle of doing it. It's not before or after. And you are doing it successfully. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, good.
I love it. I'm very good at it.
Okay, all right, great. So you are essentially telling your brain to think about it in the comfortable / motivating / successful way. Okay, so let's do another one. Let's do the anxiety producing one. That's not going to be the main one we're going to focus on for this question, but just for completion's sake. So can you think of something that creates anxiety or a sense of stress or fear?
Absolutely.
Okay, so think about that. Again, don't change it. Get the image in your mind. Now this time you are again in the middle of doing it, not before or after. Only this time something is going wrong. There's some bad consequence. Something bad is happening. Something like that, and it creates anxiety. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So if you have something that creates anxiety, it's the same thing, except now something's going wrong. Okay. So now to the real one that we're going to talk about, which is the tedium or boredom side. So I want you to think of something that is a tedious chore. It could be homework. It could be anything like that.
Okay. That's what I'll think of.
Okay, great. Do that.
Because that's how I think of it already.
All right. So when you think about that, now this time, okay, again, get it in your mind. Don't change it. So you've got your tedious chore in your mind. So now you are not thinking about being in the middle of doing it. You are thinking about having to do it in the future. And it's something that you're thinking of the problem state, whether it's the homework not done yet or the work not done yet, and you have to do it in the future. Is that right?
That's exactly how it goes.
Okay, great. So now again, this is one of the most important things. There is no activity that is inherently motivating, tedious, or anxiety producing. Some people like cleaning and doing dishes. Some people like jumping out of airplanes. Some people like stamp collecting. Some people like watching TV. So, and it's not because our brains are physiologically different. Neurologically, our brains are 99+% the same. The difference is how you think about them, how you perceive that activity in the ways that we're talking about now. So for example, imagining being in the middle of doing it versus it being in the future, etc. We're just in the habit of thinking about certain things in certain ways, and that can be changed. None of those are true or false. None of them are right or wrong. None of them are good or bad. They are only more or less useful for your goal. And as an interesting tangential note, there is nothing that your brain does that is never useful. Every single thing your brain ever does is useful in some context. For example, thinking about something in a tedious chore way would be useful if you want to do less of it. Thinking about something in an anxiety-producing way would be useful if your behavior is too reckless. Let's say someone who habitually drinks and drives. If they're still alive and not in jail, it would be useful to them to think about drinking and driving in a more anxiety-producing way. So every single thing your brain does is useful in some context. It gets back to this machine idea. Your brain is mechanical. Every single thing is a tool, and they're all useful in some context. There is some, like whatever you're thinking, whatever your problem is, the process, the thinking, feeling, behaving process is useful in some context. But if you perceive it as a problem, it's not useful in the current context, and it would be good for you to use a different tool. We're never taught to do this in school. We have to learn all kinds of things in school, but we're never used how to use the machine. Okay, so that's what this is about. Okay, so back to your specific issue, which is seeing computer things in the motivating way and homework things in the tedium producing way. There's a few ways we could address that, but I think the most direct and useful way would be to change it so that you think about the homework in the more motivating way, the successful way. So, all right, so we've got A and B that we're going to work with now. A is the old way, which is thinking about homework as something in the future that you have to do. So there's two elements. These are the most important elements. Number one, thinking about it being in the future as opposed to doing it right now. So if you think about having to do something in the future, you are telling your brain to create a sense of tedium about it. And number two, thinking about doing it successfully and it being easy and getting that sense of accomplishment from doing it. So A is the old way, which is imagining the homework, having to do it in the future. It's not done yet. You're thinking of the problem state. B, the new way, is thinking about you being in the middle of doing it. You think, oh, I have homework. I'm in the middle of doing it. I'm doing it successfully. It's easy. I'm getting a sense of accomplishment for it. Notice how that feels much different than the old way, right? Okay, so now here's another important thing. If you are in the habit of thinking about a certain thing in the tedious way, you are going to be of the opinion that that activity is tedium producing. So if you habitually think about homework or dishes or any kind of chore as being in the future and not having been done yet, you are going to be of the opinion that you don't like doing homework or dishes. Now, that's not true or false. That's just how you're used to thinking about it. It's like if I normally if I normally get an orange shirt and I don't like the color orange, I'm going to be of the opinion that I don't like shirts. Does that make sense? If there are only orange shirts, if we take someone and grow them up in where they have no outside influence and they only have orange shirts and they don't like the color orange, they're going to have the opinion that they don't like shirts. Okay? So if you think about homework in this, if you habitually think about homework in this way where it's in the future and you get this tedious chore feeling, you're going to think that you don't like homework. But there's a lot of people that do like doing work in their field. They enjoy their field. They enjoy working out problems in them. And you can be like that also. Everyone can do that. So, and the key is, if you ask someone who enjoys whatever their work is, if you say, think about your work, I guarantee they will think about being in the middle of doing it and doing it successfully. Okay? So the main thing I would say for you without hypnosis would be to, number one, understand and really be familiar with the difference between thinking about something in a tedious way in the future, problem not solved yet, and in the success way, which would be in the middle of doing it and doing it successfully, getting a sense of accomplishment. Number one, being aware and familiar with the differences. And then number two, get into the habit of thinking about it the second way. Tell yourself, your brain will listen to you. Your brain knows that you are the leader. So encourage yourself, oh, this is how I think about homework now. That's my normal way of thinking about it. And what will happen is, as you get more used to it, your opinion will change and you will become of the opinion that you enjoy doing homework. You're good at it. It doesn't take that long. You enjoy solving problems related to your field. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we want to think of, even though it's sort of a chore for me to do right now, I want to think of it as a rewarding experience rather than a punishing experience. That's
a good question. That's a little bit of it. The first thing you said was, even though it's a chore to you right now, the thing is, it's not really a chore. Whether it's a chore or not is just a perception. It is not, in reality, a chore or not a chore. It's not anything. It's just a set of actions. And so it's not a chore. If you think about it in terms of it being in the future and you having to do it and it not being done yet, your brain is going to get the chore feeling. If you think about it like problems that you enjoy solving and you're in the middle of doing it and you're doing it successfully, your brain will think of it as a thing that you enjoy doing. Your brain will label it as a thing that you enjoy doing. So I would say, get into the habit of thinking about it as being something like, if I say, oh, you have homework, imagine doing it right now and getting it done and doing it successfully, because that's the sort of thing that you're good at. If your brain, as soon as anything that you do 51% of the time, your brain will start doing automatically. So as you more frequently think about homework in this new way, your brain will switch over and start doing that automatically.
So it can be something that I enjoy and want to do. Right,
exactly. If you can think of another thing that you enjoy doing, like maybe you enjoy doing crossword puzzles, maybe you enjoy doing word searches, maybe you enjoy some kind of thing that other people would perceive as work, maybe, but you would enjoy puzzling things out. When you think about it in that way, your brain will start labeling it as something that you enjoy doing.
And so will that make me more or less likely to want to pursue other distractions, in other words?
Right. I'd say, if distractions are here and homework is here, then obviously your brain's going to want distractions. What we're trying to do is raise up homework so it's here. Now we could also, this is something I would do on maybe a case-by-case basis, but we could also lower the distractions so they seem more like a tedious chore. That is absolutely possible. But I would say the simplest and first thing I would do is, whenever someone's doing something, if you're consulting them and trying to help them, the first thing you're going to do is knock out the most obvious problems that they're doing. And in this case, the most obvious problem is you're thinking about homework like a chore as opposed to a puzzle that you're good at and enjoy solving.
So the problem isn't the distractions. The problem is the way that I think about the homework.
That would be I would hesitate to call that a problem, but it's just like, if there's a screw that needs to be screwed in and you've got a hammer, I wouldn't call that a problem. I would just say you have the wrong tool. And the right tool is to put it down, pick up a screwdriver, and do it the correct way. So that's what I'm saying. That is the best way forward. I would say the first, simplest, best way forward would be to get in the habit of thinking about homework as something that you're good at, that you're doing right now. That's not something that's easy to overlook. Don't overlook that. Whenever you think about it in the present, because then you're telling your brain that you can do it. It's successful. You're not putting it off for the future. So it's in the present and you're doing it successfully. Those are the two key things. Those are the tools that will best get the screw into the wood. Okay? So we're not thinking in terms of, I've used the word problem, but we're not thinking about problems or anything bad. We're thinking about the most effective way to arrange the way you think about homework so that your brain labels it as something enjoyable. Yeah. And again, it's not true or false that it's enjoyable. It's not true or false that anything's enjoyable or not enjoyable or a chore. That's just what you're how you're in the habit of thinking about it. Somebody else who has 99.9% the same brain as you, which is everybody, could enjoy homework. That doesn't mean that they're right and you're wrong or vice versa. It's just they're thinking about it in a different way. They're using a different tool mentally and of course you're not doing it on purpose or doing it accidentally, or they just picked it up somewhere. You can do it on purpose if you understand the tools. If two people have a piece of wood with a screw in it, one person's given a hammer, one person's given a screwdriver, it's not the hammer person's fault. But if the hammer person can turn around and notice they have a whole set of tools that they can use at any time, that person's going to be much better off than the other person that was just handed the right tool accidentally.
Okay.
Okay.
No, I definitely like that solution.
Okay, great. So that
sounds tangible.
Yeah, okay, good. And so I want everyone to just notice sort of the mechanical nature of this. It's true for everyone. Everyone can apply the same type of solution, and it will work reliably when you do it correctly, just like anything else that's mechanical. Okay, and let's see. We have an email from Anjali, who is our normal co-host. And she has a question that's actually, you know what, I'm going to say this. I'm going to save this for a minute because I think Brad has a question that's very similar. So Brad, did you have one last question?
Yes. So related to the fact that I do almost everything exclusively on my computer. It's like the biggest aspect of my life. It's work, it's school, it's studying, it's bill pay. Everything is on my computer. So I have a problem of insomnia, and I find myself whenever I'm awake, I feel the need to be on my computer. I feel that that is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so when I go down to sleep at night, I still feel the need to log on to check my emails, to see if I got all my my homework done, a number of other things, just to calm myself down. But that seems a little counterintuitive, because then I'm up and I'm back at my computer again, and I'm not getting to sleep, and I'm losing sleep because of this.
Okay. Yep. And just based on your description, there's a couple of ways that people can have insomnia, but just based on your description, I know exactly which one it is. And also, the email from Anjali was, how does hypnosis and hypnotherapy help with sleep? So, let me repeat back to you what I heard. So throughout the day, you're doing 100 different things, usually at the same time. Like now more than ever in history, we have the ability to multitask. Our computer will allow us to do 8, 16, 20 things at the same time. And so your brain has gotten used to defocusing into 16 different things. And in fact, you're rewarded for doing that. You get a little bit of stimulation for each of those 16 things that you complete. As soon as you finish them, you get a little stimulation for that. So your brain is constantly rewarded for being defocused like that. And most of the things are so easy to use that it only requires a tiny little bit of attention. So that's further inclination to do things in this defocused way. Oh, I want to check my email. I just click this one button and then switch to something else while it's loading up. We are trained all throughout the day to defocus into 100 simple tasks. So, and what happens is when you try to go to sleep, your brain is still defocused and going in 100 different directions. Now, we talk about the mind, but really we're just a body. We're just a body that has a brain in it. A mind is just a model for talking about certain effects that the brain has. But really, we're just all physical. We're just we're a body. And so therefore it shares all the same energy. So if your brain is very active, your body also becomes active because it's all part of the same machine. So what happens is if your brain is really active, your body can't get relaxed enough to go to sleep. Now, one thing that's very common, and you could tell me if you experience this also, is someone will be watching TV or doing one activity and they get very sleepy, and then they go to bed and then they wake right up. Do you ever have that happen?
Every single night.
Okay.
That describes me almost perfectly.
Okay, great. So what's happening is when you're doing one activity, like watching TV or whatever the one thing is, it focuses all your attention down to one thing. And only in that focused state can your body relax enough to get sleepy. You can kind of think of it as focusing your attention down triggers your chemistry to create sleep chemicals. That's an oversimplification, but you can think about it that way. And then you go lay down, and then suddenly your mind goes everywhere, and it wakes you back up. So that is such a common issue, and there's one solution, and that solution is you have to focus your energy down when you are trying to go to sleep. Now, you could do this externally through watching TV, listening to music, some kind of external task. One kind of interesting thing that I do sometimes, and I recommend sometimes, you could try this. It's along this exact same line. If you are laying down, force yourself to keep your eyes open. Because when you close your eyes, it's a trigger for your mind to defocus. If you keep your eyes open and look at whatever you're looking at, whether it's the bedstand or the wall or whatever, you'll be surprised at how quickly your eyes want to close. But don't let them close. And it's just an exercise to focus your energy. You'll be surprised at how quickly you get sleepy when you do that. Force your eyes to stay open and look at whatever you're looking at. And then there's internal solutions, such as the classic counting sheep. And the reason that works is because you're focused on just one thing. Now, the most important aspect of any of these things, is don't let yourself do other things. A very common mistake people make is they'll start focusing on one thing, and then as they get a little sleepier, they'll lose control and they'll start focusing on a bunch of things. You have to force yourself, just as you have to force yourself to keep your eyes open with that one technique, you have to force yourself to keep counting the sheep. You have to force yourself to keep focusing on one thing, whether it's music and you might think, oh, well, if you're forcing yourself, won't that wake you up? No, it absolutely won't. forcing yourself to keep yourself focused. And after a while, you'll get good at it. You won't have to force yourself anymore. It's just practice. When you focus on just one thing, it will trigger those sleep chemicals to start, and you'll get sleepier. You'll be surprised at how quickly you get sleepy. One other internal exercise that I recommend the most frequently is a meditative exercise that is very simple. Even if you've never meditated before, you can do this easily. And that's to count your breaths from 100 all the way down to 0 and focus just on your breathing. So it's like 100 and then all the way down to 0. And again, the key is to not let yourself go off into other things. Really focus on the breath, really focus on the number, force yourself to stay on topic. And a lot of times I can't even get past 90 when I do that. So keep doing that, stay focused. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds sort of similar to the way like a multi-core processor would operate.
Really? Tell me about that.
So whenever I attempt to put my computer to sleep, sorry about that.
That's fine.
It won't go to sleep if I have a bunch of applications open. All the processes are dedicated to the task of saving the information, closing the video, closing the applications, and sometimes it won't even go to sleep. So I noticed that when I close all these applications first and then attempt to put the computer to sleep, it snaps to sleep almost instantly.
Yep.
So you're saying the brain works almost completely the same way.
Right. Yep. Very similar. Yep. Great. So, okay, let's see. That is about all the time we have for today. Thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you, Brad, very much for being on the show.
It's a pleasure.
And we will look forward to seeing you next week, Thursday at 7 EST for Hypnosis Chat, Episode 3. Take care, and I'll see you next time.